The Brave Space podcast is devoted to the meeting of body and spirit. In a culture of shared respect and love for the life force that moves through us, we move, feel, dance, breathe, touch, and sing in somatic ecstatic prayer. Brave Space is the place of belonging, safe enough to take the risk of being vulnerable. Welcome to the Brave Space podcast. I'm Matthew Nelson, and I'm here with Christina Sasser from Portland,
Oregon,
who is an ecstatic dance DJ and producer of incredible events.
Thank you.
You've been rolling through Boise here for a number of years now.
A couple of years now. I've been coming through and playing dances here and connecting with the community. That's how we met. Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's a blast. So, why don't we start, if you can just speak a little bit about what you do, what you hold.
Sure. I have been a dancer my entire life. I grew up going to a dance studio from the time I was 3 years old. My mom and my sister are both dance instructors. My aunts own the dance studio. So I've literally been dancing from as much as I could walk, basically. And dance has been a huge part of my life, my entire life. I discovered ecstatic dance when I was in my early 20s, and I've been doing ecstatic dance for about 13 or 14 years now, and started Ecstatic Dance Portland about 1 year ago after being an ecstatic dance DJ for almost a decade now. I do other dance and conscious dance related events in Oregon. Besides the ecstatic dance, I have an event that I produce in the summer called the Medicina Camp Out, which you've taught at.
Love.
We're a small micro festival that is primarily focused on embodiment, ecstatic dance, music and dance, and a beautiful forested nature setting. And really just about inviting in all the dancers from around this part of the Pacific Northwest to come and gather. And we play with some special technologies there. And I also produce an event in Portland called Bass Witch, which is more of a all-female in the bass music scene, which is predominantly very male-oriented. So I wanted to shake that up a bit. And really make it all about the ladies. I also teach people how to DJ. I run DJ courses a couple times a year with a specific emphasis on really trying to help empower more people to step into DJing ecstatic dance spaces. I try to produce conscious and ecstatic dance oriented events of different kinds of styles and natures whenever I get the opportunity with different artists that come through. So I'm just having a blast at this point in my life.
So good.
Everything is music and dance oriented. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it.
You're welcome.
The world needs it. So I'd love to get into some of these pieces about, like, some of the people listening may never have been to an ecstatic dance, may not know what that is. Others probably have been to a bunch of it. I'd love to get into some of the nitty gritty of, like, what is it?
What is ecstatic dance? Probably the most simplistic way to describe ecstatic dance is that it's a free-form movement practice that really only has about 4 kind of basic tenets to it. And these are not rules. They are not strict, hardline rules. The main tenets are barefoot. You practice with your feet on the ground, the connection to the earth. The next is no conversing or talking on the dance floor. It's really about, getting into our movement, getting into our bodies, and kind of stepping out of the brain space and the conversational space. So that's the second piece. The third is no phones or videos. This is not about spectating. This is really about what I just said, getting into the body. And so it's not about looking any particular way or looking good or looking pretty. So leaving the technology out of the space And the fourth is really come as you are, which means, you know, come without intoxicants, without drugs or alcohol, typically. Really come as you are wherever you're at emotionally. It's, you know, if you're struggling with grief or with depression or with anger, it's all welcome here. This is a practice that is meant for catharsis and release. And I think that's kind of like in the name is the ecstatic part.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are kind of the main tenets, but oftentimes they're not strictly adhered to.
Totally. Right.
So as I say, there's no hardline rules with ecstatic dance. It really got started 22 years ago. It's kind of like this broad, free-form container that came out of conscious dance practices. It was born out of a conscious dance movement. The creator of ecstatic dance was somebody who had been doing conscious dance practices. His name was Max Fathom. And
Oh, I haven't heard about him. That's funny.
Okay.
I've heard so many origin stories. And to me, like my origin story is dancing at American Dance Festival. It's a bunch of contemporary modern dancers, pre-professional dancers. And we'd have live musicians. We'd be in this, it was like 90 degrees, you know, and we're in this beautiful, like, open space with a wood floor and the windows open and there's a second level and you can look over the balcony and everyone just be jamming. And that's been going on for I don't know how many years. That's been going on 40,
Totally.
50, something like that, at least.
Right.
Like I think people have always done this.
Exactly.
And there's these different origin stories of how it's come through different people. And the essence of it
Totally.
to me is this like loose sense of communal prayer.
That's very spot on. Yeah, I mean, in Portland, we have a community called Sacred Circle. They don't say Sacred Circle Ecstatic Dance, but that's essentially what they're doing.
Totally.
And they've been doing that way before ecstatic dance was called ecstatic dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, the origin story from like ecstaticdance.org is that this person, Max Fathom, and his partner, they were facilitating conscious dance practices in the Bay Area, and he went to Burning Man. And at Burning Man was exposed to all of the electronic music just out on the playa and found this sort of inspiration naturally between what was going on with ecstatic or with conscious dance practices and the dancing that he saw people doing to these, you know, big electronic stages and sound systems on art cars out on the playa.
Yeah.
And he took those two things and went to Kalani, which is a retreat center on the Big Island, and started the first official ecstatic dance as under that title. That's the origin story that I know.
Yeah,
and that's why they
the
call
Kalani part. I didn't remember Max's name. And Yeah. And you know what strikes me in that, and it's this piece that Burning Man definitely brings, is the big sound system and the subwoofers.
Yes.
The bass aspect. And on another episode, I spoke with Light Language with Burks about this because it's so key to what he brings as a music producer. And you with bass switch, right? There's something about those bass frequencies that open the root. They open the base chakra, right?
Yeah.
And you see people getting low. You know, when we talk about getting down, you know, as dancers, it's literal.
It's bass that's making you get down because it's like, whoa. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I think that is really a hallmark of ecstatic dance is about the bass, the sub-bass frequencies. It's probably not something that's given enough credence when we talk about what ecstatic dance is.
Yes.
But I actually think it is one of the most sort of significant defining characteristics of what makes ecstatic dance. And one of my main mentors is Baron von Spirit, who's kind of an early ecstatic dance DJ in this whole scene. He was one of the kind of original regular rotating DJs in the Bay Area ecstatic dance scene. And he really was the first one to really like impart that to me. Like, you have to feel the music to feel it. And the way you do that is through the sub-bass frequencies. It's through the subs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me. Like, I've been to dances that don't do that. And like, I can drop in as a dancer anywhere. I can drop in without music. Like, I have a huge appreciation for dropping into the dance without music. But you bring that, it's a whole different piece. And I think back, like, the power of the drum. Like, if we're going to look at West African music, or we're going to look at a lot of kind of non-technologically driven musical traditions, it's there. You orchestral music. You get the bass, you know, like in the timpani and the, you know, like it drives something in our emotional patterning, moves the energy.
Absolutely. Yep. This is why bass switch came to evolve from the other things I was doing in ecstatic dance. Yeah, I mean, and ecstatic dance is not fully dependent on bass, of course.
Right.
Like, ecstatic dance really sort of like borrows and takes from all of these other conscious dance practices. Probably most significantly is the 5 rhythms, Gabrielle Roth's work. I mean, I feel like ecstatic dance is really about taking dancers through an arc, a journey.
Yeah.
And that is really super informed by the 5 rhythms work of, you know, taking people through that wave experience, which mimics these different emotional experiences that we all have as human beings. It's a full spectrum human experience that you're distilling into a music and dance journey arc.
Yes.
Starting with flowing, lyrical, chaos. Oh, did I say it right?
You know, I'm not in that system.
Flowing,
so
staccato, chaos, lyrical, and then stillness.
Okay. But this sense of the way I come from a Laban background. So in that system, there's all sorts of ways we break down the energy of what's there that map. It's a different map, but it's got similar kind of properties. And we always talk about phrasing. So when we talk about an arc, it's like we begin here, we go through this to end to this. Like, every sentence is a phrase, every breath is a phrase.
Yeah.
And so the arc of ceremony that ecstatic dance provides, those names, those labels give a map for, you know, what's happening in chaos. Like, you know, like all the weird
intensity, catharsis, anger, rage even. I mean, it's all of the human emotions, if an ecstatic dance is held well, will have some element of each of those pieces in there.
Yeah.
Range. Yeah.
A range of emotional possibility for the body to work through. It's not like we're thinking about it.
No.
But you as a DJ, me as a DJ too, I don't DJ as well as you do, but there's that ability to shape the energy in the space.
Yeah, and it can be very thematic or not. I think, and because ecstatic dance is such a open source movement, meaning that there's not some sort of central organization or person or character that's sort of like, you know, holding it. It's really this organic movement that's sort of just spread organically all throughout the world over the last 22 years.
Yeah.
And there's so many different variations that are called ecstatic dance. Sometimes I go to things that are called ecstatic dance. I'm like, that really wasn't an ecstatic dance at all. That was like a party.
Totally.
But yeah, I think that's part of the beauty of it, is that it's very open format and free form, and it's open to a lot of interpretation, for better or for worse. I think that's just part of the deal with ecstatic dance.
Right. Because it's not being constrained. It's more like organically progressing through. Yeah, it has its own life as something that's clearly working.
Yeah.
Like, it's growing and growing, and it's improvisational is so potent to me, because I look at like everyone going to yoga, doing yoga. I love yoga, right? It's form. We have these specific postures, and then it's like, what happens when we step off the mat? What happens when we allow all the form to naturally emerge. That power of improvisation, stepping from the known into the unknown, it's what I'm most passionate about as a movement teacher. As it's like all the different ways we can depart and return to form. And ecstatic dance is built on that. It's purely improvisational practice.
Yeah, really in every sort of opening circle, I just always say the same thing over and over again, is that this space is here for you to find whatever medicine you need. And that is a very personal experience and journey. So it's really like this amazing container where you can kind of go as shallow or as deep as you want to go. And it's really flexible. Yeah, and there's so much room. There's infinite possibility for creation and play within that container, which is something that I really love about it. I never get bored. And I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, so I tend to get bored with things very quickly and want to move on, but it's amazing how much ecstatic dance has captured me. And there's always new rabbit holes to kind of like play with in it.
Oh, fun. I'm recognizing we could probably serve people by talking about some of the recipes for like an excellent ecstatic dance. And I think you spoke to differentiating ecstatic dance from just like a party. And it is a party. And it's so much more than a party. It is this, for me, this sense of communal prayer through the body, like reading the body as a spiritual text. We get to just like interpret it. It's like, oh, this is my experience, and dive in. And the way the space is held, I've been in ones that have brought me there, and I've been in ones where I've had to force myself there or haven't even been able to get there because there are certain conditions that just aren't allowing it.
100%.
So let's see if we can make a little kind of list, if you will, a roadmap.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, just kind of playing off what you just said, I feel like the dance floor is almost always like this metaphor for life. Anything that one can experience in life, we can also experience it on the dance floor in sort of a, some other way through movement and dance. So it's this microcosm.
Yeah.
So what can be some of the conditions or ingredients, as you say, to creating a really excellent microcosm for us to be able to do that work or play, whatever you want to call it,
Yes.
where the dance mirrors life and we're able to work through things somatically and through our body and through our dance in that creative process with others in a dance space that brings us more clarity or healing or resolution to things that are happening in our lives outside of the dance floor.
Well said.
So I think probably one of the most crucial ingredients that I would identify is a sense of coherency amongst the people on the dance floor.
Yes.
And that's not always easy to come by, especially if a community is sort of new or getting started. And it can really just start with like a handful of people. It usually starts with the core facilitators. They are holding a lot, not only as like setting up the space, but oftentimes those are folks that are really devoted to dance and the practice and have more of a comfortability with being in that somatic space in their bodies.
Yes.
And I think it's just, there's that, mirroring experience that we do naturally as humans, especially on the dance floor, where if you have others in the space that are very comfortable being in a more somatic and embodied state, it helps to gives others that ability to mirror that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've certainly noticed that, it doesn't really matter if there's 100 people in the room or if there's 25 people in the room. If there's a certain percentage of people in the room that are very comfortable and have this sort of coherence within themselves and with others and moving together, and they're able to really sort of just get out of their head really quickly and easily, and they're not worried about what other people are thinking about them, and they're really just coming from that place of movement and embodiment, and it really helps the whole field to drop in really quickly.
It's like the heart center is the electromagnetic center of our body, right? It has
Yeah.
this tremendous field. And to be able to drop into that place of listening, whether it feels like it's the heart or the pelvic floor or the fingertips or whatever it is, but that I talk about it as sensual intelligence of being able to feel. Like, what are we doing at ecstatic dance? We're moving to feel. This is the core somatic practice. This is the core of a somatic practice, as far as I'm concerned, is moving to feel. Then it's a way of relating and a way of being that most people have no idea even exists.
Yeah.
And you get enough people in the room creating that coherent field, and it drops the others in. Like, lately I've been talking about, like, how do we be the energy, the joy and presence that allows others around us to open, allows them to awaken without us even trying. It's because our field drops people in, and I think you just spoke to that.
Yeah.
And I love that it's the first thing you brought up. Because, all the rest doesn't matter. You could be playing on a little trebly speaker. You could be on a cement floor. You could be wherever. If that is there, something is going to happen.
I think it's the most crucial ingredient it's not even a critical mass. It's just like enough of a percentage of people that are in that kind of dropped in coherent field together.
Yeah.
It's a lot for one person to hold. So it's really helpful to have a community there.
Yes.
And I see it in different communities that I go to. It's almost like the more long lasting a community's been there, usually that strength is more intangible and noticeable.
Yeah.
I was just in Flagstaff, as a matter of fact, and it's a very small dance community. I think they typically get between like maybe 20 and 50 people every Sunday to come and dance together. But a lot of those folks have been dancing together for well over a decade. And it was just like, I just left the experience feeling so deeply nourished just from being in there. And it was the first time I was ever in a room with any of those people before.
Yeah.
But the difference you can feel in your body is quite tangible.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How many dance communities do you think you've been in at this point?
Oh, probably around 40 or so. Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I've visited a lot.
Yeah.
I've kind of made it one of my personal missions to drop in with as many dance communities as possible. Yeah. And so I've prioritized traveling a lot, and I get as much joy out of it. I almost feel like I'm a student of this movement that we call ecstatic dance. So it's an honor to be here and sharing.
Yeah, great. Fellow student.
Amateur student, detective, sleuth,
Well, it's like one of my spiritual teachers talks about that constant return to the advanced beginner. Like, if we can be a student of the thing, then we can sit with it.
I'm just constantly fascinated.
As we try to grasp the mystery too hard, it's like, it falls apart.
Yeah, I'd say the next thing that feels really important ingredient-wise is the musical journey, the musical arc. I feel like having a DJ at the wheel who understands that arc journey and how it mirrors the human emotional spectrum is really important to being able to reach those states of breakthrough, ecstasy, catharsis, even breakdown sometimes, emotional release, integration, all of the different pieces. So that's a really important one. Also, I mean, it goes hand in hand. You can't have a great musical journey without having good sound.
Yes. Right.
So
that's how we're receiving it.
Yeah.
That is the actual vibration. Is to have good sound.
Good sound is important, and good sub-bass frequencies, as I've mentioned before, is important. Also,
the subs.
Gotta have the sub-bass. A dance floor that's comfortable for people is important as well. Yeah, I've seen dances on concrete floors many times, and they're harder to sustain over the long haul.
Body.
Yeah.
It's really hard on the body.
It's hard on the body to dance on concrete.
Where you're playing today is
it's concrete.
Concrete. And I try to wear shoes there. That's got its own problems. And it's like, it's like when that's the space that's given, then that's the space that's given. But I've found I won't invest myself into building a dance on a concrete floor because I'm like, this is fundamentally a danger to the body. And especially you start doing anything with contact improv or something, it just...
Yeah, that's where injuries can happen.
It's where injuries happen. And if this is medicine...
You don't really want to walk away the next day and just feel like, oh, my body is really hurting from getting this journey yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really encourage people to come back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hate to say it, but I just don't see a lot of dances that have sustained themselves over the long haul that are in spaces with concrete floors.
Have you seen any good solutions to concrete floors? Like, I've
seen people put the puzzle mats down, and it definitely helps. Those can be a little tricky to dance on too sometimes, though, because they can kind of catch your toes a little bit.
Saw someone break a toe in a dance I was holding that had, it wasn't puzzle mat, but it was a similar kind of sticky, you played that spot.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it was lovely to some degree, but try to turn on it and it could break a toe.
Totally.
And she broke a toe.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a good dance floor is a pretty critical ingredient, I think. If you're if your goal is to create a long-term sustainable ecstatic dance container, a nice dance floor is part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really nice to dance outside on grass too, so that can work as well. Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah. I'd say another ingredient is just around the container itself and how that's held. And I've seen that done so many different ways. You can have an opening circle, a closing circle, one or the other, both, no circle at all, nothing, you know. I feel like though the dances that have retained, you know, a strong community over a long period of time, there is some amount of space holding that happens there.
Yeah.
That can be with sort of a core facilitator or a team of core facilitators, just at least laying foundational rules for people in the space and agreements. Or it can be as deep as having circles afterwards where people are welcome to share and talk about their experience for sometimes up to an hour. I feel like that's
getting a little long, but
I don't like that personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I always try to like contain it so that there's the ability to share, but not to go so deep into story. Like, what is the experience? Can we get the essence of someone's experience as a gift to the community so that there's that coherence of like, when does it become a weight on the community versus when is it a sharing of the soul peeking through like a little glimpse? And then can we let the story be there only as much as it's really necessary for that? And then it can happen in 15 minutes for a circle.
Totally. It doesn't need to be gratuitous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that actually hurts communities sometimes when there's not facilitation that knows how to sort of move some people along and keep the container a little bit tighter and concise and like slim on words sometimes.
And then pull a little bit from those people, the voices that aren't being heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is so potent because there's sometimes the voices that know exactly what's actually going on underneath.
Well, and then oftentimes it's usually the same people that like to say the same things every single time.
Yeah, I've been one of those people at times. Like, okay, enough. No.
And I think another ingredient that is probably less, recognized, but is also really important is a team. It's really hard for one person or even a couple of people to consistently hold those spaces over time. Like, especially if you're doing a dance every week and you're doing it for, a couple of years, you get into it, 5 to 10 years later, you need a solid team of people around you to hold that space with you.
Yes.
From doing things, just setting things up and breaking things down and sweeping the floor and counting the money and greeting people as they come in and all of the things. It's a lot for one person to hold.
Yes.
It's not a full-time job or anything to do it. This is always like a secondary sort of thing that people do. I think typically maybe there's a handful of people that hold an ecstatic dance and do it as their main sort of source of income in this world, but I doubt that's true for many.
It's not common. And there's a certain kind of, and it rubs right up against some big issues there.
It really does, actually.
And I felt that as a space holder of, I'm like, well, I need to be respected for what I'm holding. And at the same time, then I look at the people who can't really afford it and I want them to have the space. But then I've been like holding a line of, well, this is like, costs money to have a studio.
Yeah.
It's hard to
gotta
show
pay
up.
the
I
rent.
put hours of work into my playlists. Like, people don't necessarily get what goes into it. And then there are people who are willing to throw it for free, and that's incredible too. And I wouldn't want to say, oh, you shouldn't do that because some of us need to make our living. It's like, no, thank you for showing up. Like, what a gift. You get to do that.
I just always look at it as like more is more, and that's good. The more
Yeah.
music and dancing going on in the world is a good thing no matter what. But
Yes.
yeah, but having a team is crucial. And it takes some of that emotional labor that can come off of like one person. As you know this, like if you're sort of the core person who's holding these spaces where people can sometimes experience a lot of different things that touch on really deep emotions, it's very easy to be assigned unconsciously from people in the community that you're either there to be their therapist or be the holder of their projections or be an intermediary between issues that are going on. And so that's where a team really makes a big difference, is like, we can't hold these things individually.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I so resonate with that. And there's this kind of amount of drama that shows up in these fields. Like, I look at the amount of drama I've experienced and I've seen as a man, what's been projected on me, what I see projected on other men. Certainly some of those stories are probably true too, and there have been places that people have been wronged. There's places where there's these kind of battles between facilitators. And it's amazing to me the amount of drama that shows up in this field. And I'm just like, what is this about? Aren't we just like,
I feel you.
dancing with some music here? Like, but this power that we're talking about is a spiritual kind of power. So it's one of the most potent aspects of life. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we're talking about the life force. We're talking about the erotic force of life traveling through us in its full longing and potency.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's going to be drama, especially as it's a fairly unregulated field.
Totally.
We're just kind of spraying that power around, and thank goodness, that's the beauty of it. And then what you're speaking to about having community around it can really help. And I've found I had my dance grow and grow, and then some drama went down, and it closed for a while. And now I hold a pretty small container, and I've tried to bring others in and grow it, and it's like, that's happening other places around. It's my job to hold it when I can on my own, and it stays pretty small and beautiful. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's the size of the field, the way it can work with me holding it alone, that maintains its coherence. And then when I'm in other containers where I have co-facilitators or whatever it is, it can. But the power
gets bigger.
Yeah, because then we get into the we space.
Yeah.
That it can hold a lot more. Even just having assistance. Like, I've had assistants in the room.
And it doesn't even need to be anything that's spoken to explicitly. Right. It just is, when there is more of a container of a team of people holding it, that whatever that psychological mechanism in people is, where they see somebody who's like emerging as a leader, they either want to project or rebel or assign or anything, like that is greatly diminished when there's a team of people holding it.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of my biggest fears in stepping into facilitating the dance that we're holding in Portland, because we're getting like 100 to sometimes 150 people in the room. And I don't know. I don't want to say like I'm allergic to drama, but I just really want to protect my peace.
Yeah.
That's something that's really important to me. And so, yeah, I oftentimes talk to close friends about how stepping into this role, it's such a risky maneuver because I really want to like retain my autonomy and my peace, and I don't want to be available to everybody all the time, and like having good, clear boundaries about what is mine and how much space and support do I want to hold for people versus how much am I here to just, open up a space for people to experience what they can experience in it, and holding an energetic line.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is mine and that's yours. And
that models it too. Like you talked about, like what are some of the space, the agreements in a space that make it really work, that make it coherent, that make it a safe enough space to dive in together. And the boundaries you're talking about holding as facilitator, I feel also model that there are boundaries, and that if we can respect that, as I like to think of it, because I think of it so erotically, to me it's that the life force is coming through me, and that is my relationship with the divine. It is a lovemaking with the divine. And so that's in the vertical. And then in the horizontal are all these relationships. And there are plenty of times that I've been in my longing or whatever and sucked into that relational piece as my way to the divine, and then it fails.
yeah.
Because that isn't the truth. Like we're here to resonate with each other. But that primary relationship has to be within ourselves. And I think what you're speaking to that in your boundary about, like, I can't just come out and hold the whole community as just take all my energy. It's no, I'm here to model for you and bring you on this journey with music and with the right conditions. And that encourages people to step into it with a similar relationship.
This actually speaks to something I've noticed, and I don't know if I've ever really talked about it before, but I've experienced all nature of different holders of ecstatic dance spaces, right? As I've traveled around as a DJ to these communities. And I think that there are facilitators that tend to really they're almost hyper focused on holding a safe space.
Yeah.
They're extremely verbose in talking about the rules of engagement for these spaces and laying foundations for engagement. And it's really kind of like bringing it down to like the most beginner level for everybody. And it's almost like apologetic in nature sometimes, of like, okay, if you're really experienced, just kind of like suspend yourself for a minute and listen to all of this so we can all be safe. And I have so much respect and admiration for that approach. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, there's facilitators that really come in from the place that are like, I'm here to push edges. I'm here to push boundaries. I did not come into this world to play it safe and to like bring it down to the most beginner level or like the most traumatized person in the room to keep them safe. Some people are just straight up like,
Yeah.
those people are not the ones for my dance. And they're almost just matter of fact about it. And they're like, we're pushing edges and we're going places and we're going to like really make some people feel some things, and it might be uncomfortable. And they're just all about it and they own it. And so there's such this like wide range of that.
Yes.
And I have found in my experience of holding our dance for the last year that I've really kind of come into it from a really like kind of relaxed and comfortable place of trusting people out of the gate. And
Thank you.
really, we do say and reiterate the agreements every time, but it's really brief.
Yeah.
And I've been amazed, honestly. In this past year, there have been so few incidences of somebody feeling uncomfortable or feeling triggered on the dance floor. And it really just feels like when you extend that feeling out of your field as the holder of the space of like, I trust everybody. You're all adults and I trust you. That people tend to act that way.
Yes.
And of course, there's always going to be bad characters that you have to kind of like
Right. The people whose inner children are leading at that moment, right?
Yeah.
And it's so important to me not to shame those people too, but also to be clear.
Yeah.
Like, no, we can't. There are
Unfortunately, the
edges we need to
fact of
respect.
reality is, I've just come to accept this over the last 15 years of being in these spaces, is that there are people out there that are specifically coming with their own agenda to get their own needs met. Maybe they're lonely, they don't have touch. It could be even more, lecherous than that.
Yeah.
They're out there, and
Totally.
facilitators have to be aware of that reality, and you have to be
Yes.
able to willing to like nip it in the bud when you see it.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear though, usually.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for the most part, that's not the case.
Right.
Yeah. And people can be trusted.
And the power of community, like that modeling, right, of the trust, and then the way that comes through the whole, and the ability, even on the spectrum you talked about the really cautious to the like really edgy. It's like there's a communal consciousness that when it's really in tune can see what's happening. It can also go off the rails. So there's that whole angle. Like I've seen it go off rails and, then become this kind of groupthink that's dangerous too. It can really, that's where that part of me about checking in about when someone's being shamed of like, well, what's it actually serving? Like, yeah, the behavior may be wrong, but what about what they're doing is actually part of the communal lesson, the communal experience.
Yeah.
That they may be motivated by some force that we're all kind of holding a little bit, and it needs to come to the surface for us to know, because this stuff brings up so much of the shadow. It brings out the body is unconscious, and we get to watch it and go, really? That's in there? Oh. Like, who are you?
Yeah. It's such a wild journey. Yeah. And so many people, especially in our community, we have so many characters on the floor. So there's just that many, stories and personalities and all the things. But
I just got to play in it wasn't even directly your community, but in Portland last weekend.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I had so much fun. I really want to come hang out and make a tear dance.
Yeah.
Visit. It's been a couple of years now. I've been saying that it's time. I'm going to make it.
You're always invited, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
we love you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm grateful for the community in Portland. I mean, it's a very robust dance community and has been for a really long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have that coherence that I was talking about in spades in Portland. People have been dancing together for a long time there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it really easy to drop in. Yeah.
Amazing, the power in that. There's a couple pieces I wanted to check in on. One is, we talked about this a little bit this morning before we came in, about the difference in DJing for an ecstatic dance and DJing like rave, DJing party at a club with alcohol. And one element of this is the role of substance, right? Like raves, people tend to be on certain substances. Bars, people are on alcohol generally. And then there's also like some spaces that I know you've been in where there's a lot of psychedelic stuff. I've been in those spaces too.
Yeah.
And what it is to DJ for a psychedelic journey. These are all different pieces, and I'm curious what you see, what you've experienced.
Yeah, so being a DJ, I've been a DJ now for almost 10 years, and I teach people about DJing, and I love it as an art form and as a tool for expressing creativity. And I do all kinds of DJing. I do weddings, I do festivals and parties, but I got started as an ecstatic dance DJ. That's really what drew me into it. But playing the different events is really different. The ecstatic dance DJ definitely has to approach it with a lot. It's a lot harder to be an ecstatic dance DJ. Let me tell you.
Oh,
If
okay.
you are into a
This
challenge,
is the only one I know.
Okay,
Really,
well,
like it is my DJ experience. I make playlists for ecstatic
I
dance.
honestly think it's the hardest way to be a DJ is to do ecstatic dance because you are trying to cover so much ground with whatever time you have, whether it's an hour or 2 hours. You're trying to go from like, in the 50 BPM range all the way up as high as you can go, like sometimes even to 175 BPM, and then bring it back down again to the lower realms. And that's hard to do. If you're beat matching and you are, you know, using key to mix in, which any good DJ should be doing that, it's really a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also to bring in that piece of trying to use the music to sort of echo or mirror all of these different human emotions, and especially if you're even trying to tell a specific story within that, or if you have a thematic element that you're working with as a DJ, it really challenges you. I mean, I can put together a set for, say, like a Halloween party.
Yeah.
And it's going to be all bass music, and it might stay between 70 and 90 BPMs. I can put that set together, these days, maybe in like an hour. It takes me, maybe with some crate digging to find the songs or whatever, another couple hours. But the difference between that and putting together an ecstatic dance set is huge. It takes hours sometimes. I mean, when I first got started, I would pour 15 to 20 hours into playing a hour and a half long set. It was just crazy. It really takes that dedication to wanting to do this, to get into it, especially in the beginning. As you DJ longer, it gets easier and easier, just like anything.
Yeah.
And your collection grows of music, and so it makes it a lot faster because you can find, more songs in your collection to mix in key and in beat. But man, I used to spend so many hours in the beginning.
Yes.
It was not financially feasible at all. It was totally from the passion I have for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's definitely a challenge, and I've experienced some ecstatic dance DJs that are just absolutely masterful at being able to do that.
Yeah.
And they can tell a story, and they can touch on all the different emotional notes, and you really come out of those dances feeling like transformed, feeling like you have been on a hero's journey in an hour and a half,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've experienced plenty of ecstatic dances that really were a struggle to feel any kind of emotional response. Like I'm seeking for it. I'm pushing myself towards an emotional experience because I just want it and I'm digging for it, and that's what I come to these spaces to look for.
Right.
And sometimes it just falls kind of dead and flat for me.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, I'm really just find something I can grab onto.
Right.
I've made it a rule in my booking part of my career to always review at least one ecstatic dance set from any DJ that we book to come and play. And I really want to, I'm like looking and listening to hear, do they get it? Do they understand what we're going for here with ecstatic dance? Are they taking us on a ride? Are they taking us through the arc? Are we feeling the emotional experience through it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mentioned Baron von Spirit earlier. He was the first person to say to me that a good ecstatic dance journey should be like a lovemaking session. You don't go into making love with somebody and just like,
Open it all up.
You just don't start hitting it hard like right out of the gate. You have to warm things up, and you have to find that emotional connection with another person.
Yeah.
And you have to go into those like tender places, and then from that place of connection and dropped in with one another, and that safety that you can feel to really open up and express can come through. And you go to the highest heights of ecstasy, and then you come back down and you want to hold each other and cuddle and integrate and feel that sense of just stillness and peace wash over you.
Yeah.
So it should be like that.
Yes. And that's different than what happens at a club or where also another piece of what happens in, say, a club atmosphere, aside from the alcohol, which is so, it both opens and numbs at the same time, right? There's less sensitivity and there's more openness. You can just, boom, run straight into the high, and yet it doesn't go as deep. But there's also like, some people are coming at the beginning and leave it, like a number of hours may stretch way longer, and people will come and go at different times. And so those atmospheres don't seem to have such an arc. It's just, it's on.
Yeah. And I love those spaces too. I mean, I've been going to parties and dancing since as early as I could, sneak into a place to do that.
Yeah.
And there's a place for that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not as emotionally transformational in the same ways. It doesn't get into those tender places as much, and there's not that integration. And I think that's sort of the difference and the beauty of the ecstatic dance container specifically, is that it's mostly substance free usually, and it's really about that emotional transformational journey that you go through with the music and the movement.
And I've certainly come into an ecstatic dance space and had like a little bit of mushrooms in me. And I feel like the thing with psychedelic spaces, assuming they're not fully blown out, like super high dose, that kind of thing. But I feel like what ecstatic dance does and forms like it, ceremonial spaces are transformational of consciousness. So they are psychedelic spaces with or without the substance, usually without. A little bit of those substances, especially for people who have experience with them, feels to me like it is the same kind of journey. It's like matching a beat. It's like matching a key. There is a kind of resonance there. Unless there's not, unless it's like too high a dose or the person doesn't have experience or, the things that would cause that to not be a match. It's not the set and setting for a conscious journey most of the time, unless it is.
Unless it is, yeah. And this is something that I find very exciting. I mean, there's a whole psychedelics renaissance going on right now in our world. And it's really, really exciting times. And I think that there's a really incredible possibility to see what can happen when we combine psychedelics with this transformational power of music and dance.
Yeah.
And a really, set and setting, intentionality, safe container, all of that is so incredibly important when you're adding the psychedelics into the space. Whether or not you want to call it an ecstatic dance is kind of up for debate, but recently I was watching a documentary that just came out that East Forest, who lives here in Boise. He just released this documentary, and during it he's interviewing a German researcher, and this researcher said, this is the most powerful part of the movie for me, is that he was saying, in this new psychedelic renaissance, everybody thinks that you go into the room and you lay down on the nice cozy bed and you put the eye mask on and you get your dose of mushrooms, and they put the music in the headphones, and then like the mushrooms are just gonna like heal you and make your brain figure out all these things. And he says that's actually not what's going on. You're taking in the music in a way that your brain is not normally capable of doing because of the addition of the psychedelics.
Yeah.
And so it's really the music.
Yeah, just like the ayahuasca traditions.
Yeah, that's doing this healing work.
Yeah.
And the psychedelics open up our ability to hear and feel and process things, the music, differently. So
yes.
Yeah, the sort of pleasure double play that's possible with the combination of music and dance. And then if you turn it into a triple play and you add in the psychedelic factor with the right dose point and the right setting, boy, that really excites me.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I've been experimenting with in more
Excellent.
recent years. And it's been incredible to see the results of that.
Yeah.
And to just kind of take all of this experience that I've had with the ecstatic dance world and to kind of tinker around with the triple play.
Yeah. I've been holding that, being in that in certain ways too, and I wish we could talk straight out about it. And the nature of our culture is, even though there are aspects that are legal in the right places, it's better if we don't give too many details. And I'd love if people reached out to both of us about like, hey, so this thing you were talking about, how do I get to participate in that? Because to me, it is the most potent container.
Yeah, and there's people
for-
that are doing this
change.
in different places all over too. It's very underground still right now, and kind of hush hush and like speaking cryptically about it. But
Yeah.
this movement is well underway, and I mean, something that was in that documentary. It's called Music for Mushrooms, and there was an interview, and I think he was asking her, do you think it's possible to sort of thread the needle, was the analogy that they used of, you call it the quickening, threading the needle, the great change, this massive time of upheaval that we're all living in ecologically, politically,
Yeah.
the age of Aquarius, whatever you want to call it. Like, is it possible?
We're going
that-
5D.
Yeah.
All
Can
of
we
it.
do it without psychedelics? And the woman said, nope, we sure can't.
Right. Right.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm like, well, it certainly seems like we stand a much better shot if we can integrate some of these technologies together,
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
the ancient and the future
And
technologies.
it's always been this way. That's another piece. It's not like this is just like, it's always been this way. We've always been in connection with the plants. We've always, whether you look at it through food system, whether you look at it through oil, even oils, origins come from the plants, come from the life force of the earth, right? Like the idea that we would be separate from any of that.
Yeah, and here's the other part too, is that you can't do music and dance without breath. And so that's the other amazing medicine that's probably not spoken about enough. But
Yes. Yeah, totally.
yeah.
And you look at, now I'm forgetting his name, was working with LSD until it went illegal and then just went to breathwork. Psychologist. People listening will know who I'm talking about. Holotropic breathwork, Stan Groff. That's what it is.
That's Stan Roth, yep.
Yeah, Stan
Yep.
Groff.
I
So,
love holotropic breath work. I discovered that probably 10 years ago. I was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that we could do this with just our breath. Wow.
I've been working lately with conscious connected breath, which is just simply connecting the inhale and exhale. And it tends to get me to a higher pace, or else it's so hard for me to do it slowly with no pause. So I just end up taking a faster breath rhythm. And so it ends up being a little bit like holotropic, but gentler. It's through the nose, and it will always get me moving. My body will not stay still. I'm a dancer by nature, a mover by nature, right? So I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to go with the movement and let that. But it's amazing. I did one day I was just called to keep going. I did an hour, 15 minutes of it. And I found these mudras, these positions with my hands and my body that I'm still opening, what it gave me to just,
Amazing.
and yeah, sometimes when I'm leading movement spaces, it'll be driven, we'll start with the breath and then take it into motion. And it has every bit as much effect as taking a substance or,
Every bit as much.
every bit. It's just another tool in the toolbox, another technology.
Yeah. And there's many psychedelics to sort of play around with, and dosage points and settings and containers. And yeah, it's a really fun time to be alive right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'd love to just be able to share you with the world. How do people find you?
Oh, I'm all over all the things. Sheena Medicina, SheenaMedicina.com. I have, on Instagram and on Facebook and a Linktree and all the things. And I will continue to be holding spaces every week in Portland at Ecstatic Dance Portland. And we're just about to launch season 3 of Bay Switch in 2 weeks. And we'll have several events happening over the fall and the winter. And then we'll do another Medicina Camp Out in the summer in Oregon. It'll be our 5th year. So that's really exciting. And if nobody has heard of Unison Festival, that's another passion project of mine. I've been involved with that event for the last 4 years. So we'll also be heading into our year 5 this summer.
Excellent.
And I'll be doing talent buying again for that and helping with the curation of that event. So I would love to connect with people out there that might want to connect. And I always say, I'll just see you in the sauce.
Excellent.
But feel free to reach out too. To me, I love getting messages from people just to tap in and see if we can collaborate or connect, and what magic can come from linking up with others and to play. And
It's a communal healing that happens personally, and a personal healing that happens communally. Yeah, that's the magic, right? That's the sauce. This interdependence, this interbeing.
Yeah, I've always been a very communal-oriented person. I've lived in intentional communities now for 17 years of my life.
Wow.
Yeah, either, lived in one or been a neighbor to one. It's just been a huge part of my being in the world. And I'd say ecstatic dance, probably more than anything, has always been this greater community, because it's not just even like in our local community, it's everywhere. This movement is global now. There's ecstatic dance communities all over the planet. And it's incredible to feel like you're part of something so big and that's so meaningful. So, yeah.
It's always fun when I go to a dance in some foreign place and I'm like, oh, here are my people.
Yeah, I feel that way.
There's this boat on one of the canals in Amsterdam where they have ecstatic dance every night. And I went there, I was just like, here are my people.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. It was incredible.
Well, it's actually scientifically proven that when we dance with people or if we listen to music with other people, we automatically believe that our values and beliefs are aligned with them.
Oh, wow.
So we have feelings of kinship and familiarity with them, whether we know them or not, if we dance and if we listen to music with them.
Oh my goodness.
It really does create a sense of connection.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christina. It's just been such a blast.
To have me. It's been great to talk with you. Always.